This is Author Conversations, the Stenhouse Publishers podcast. In the conclusion to our podcast series with Rick Wormeli, Rick describes what administrators see when they encounter a successful differentiated classroom.
If you were to walk into a very successful differentiated class, you would see a number of things that maybe on the surface you go, well, that looks like it's differentiated, or it's not. Here's the thing, though. It's the behind the scenes. 90% of differentiation is what teachers do before students walk through the door. So one of the things you'd want to do is make sure that you were somehow getting an up-close look at the teacher's planning process. You'd want to ask the teacher, well, why did you choose to do that? What was it about those students that made you put those students in that particular group project or whatever it is? You flexibly grouped this way. You provided that student a graphic organizer, but you did not this other student. Why is that? It's that behind-the-scenes planning. But are there some things you could typically see? Well, first, in a well-run differentiated class, not one that's just put on as a dog and pony show occasionally for, a teacher evaluation, but those classrooms where teachers consistently, whether they know it or not, they're naturals or not, but they consistently differentiate well, you would see kids actively engaged. They would absolutely be on task. They would be doing the things the teachers asked them to do because it was reasonable for them. It was developmentally appropriate. Second, you would actually see kids who were happy. They found content. They were not threatened. What we find is when students feel safe and invited, two major factors in an emotional atmosphere so that they can be successful, it's because the teacher has been developmentally appropriate for those kids. If a teacher is developmentally inappropriate, then the kid doesn't feel content. He doesn't feel like he belongs, and there's a sense of anger, maybe a feeling of hurt, and they kind of want to drop out. In fact, if they're not experiencing competence about 80% of the time, and we find kids back away and actually try to find excuses to leave the room. The third category there, a factor to consider, is, are students actually learning? Do you hear them and see evidence of their learning? If those three things are in place, it's quite likely that teacher differentiates whether she claims it or identifies it as such or not. The other kind of running theme in all this is that the teachers about what is fair isn't always equal. So the teacher will do a variety of different things in the classroom and according to different kids' needs, but there's no cry of, oh, this is unfair and that's fair, because the kids have a culture of, hey, what is fair isn't always the same thing to me as it is to somebody else, and my teacher is actually looking out for me and looking out for those other folks, and it's no weakness or no issue against me when the teacher does something different with one of my classmates. For example, the teacher might say to a small subset of students, no homework for you tonight. And the rest of the class has homework. Well, initially think that's so unfair. But no, it's not. It's actually very, very fair. Those students who were not ready to practice the material, they had not fully understood it or mastered it, well, the teacher was wise enough to realize that practice makes permanent. So she or he assessed the kids, really found out what the kids know and are able to do, and then made sure they did, not just a vicarious assessment where you hunt and peck and call on two kids and then assume the whole class has it. I mean, really, physical evidence from every single kid. And then she said, all right, I'm not going to let you practice something that you don't understand, because it'll take 10 times the emotional, intellectual energy to go back and undo that bad learning. So tonight, no homework for you, but tomorrow night you'll have homework after I've had a chance to reteach you. The rest of the students have their homework tonight. The homework burden was just extended over 2 or 3 days. This gets all kinds of emotional brownie points. If the students in the class, as we walk in to observe it, if they feel like, oh, the teacher's meeting the needs of different kids in the class, it's no sweat on me if the teacher does different things, I'm not going to cry foul, something's unfair, then you have a pretty good sense that teacher has done a great job about instituting the differentiated instruction principles, and it creates this mindset. I will do whatever it takes for you to maximize your learning over that which could otherwise have been learned, and I will teach you the ways to handle anything that is not differentiated in your life. In the differentiated class, you shouldn't see a teacher always teaching through that student's one multiple intelligence proclivity, because then they get really buff, really strong in that one proclivity, and these other parts of them never develop. It should be something where the teacher says, here are 5 different ways to take notes, not just mandating everybody in the room should do note cards or whatever it might be. and the teacher's guiding the kids through, hey, does this work for you? Does it not work for you? How this lesson that I just taught, did you really feel like you learned from that, or was there a way that I could have taught it differently? There's a certain level of metacognition that goes on as the teacher and the students collaborate together to do this thing called school and deliver the instruction. So would you see kids up in, doing different groups or all working independently? Yeah, from time to time. But would you also see whole class, everybody doing the exact same thing? Yes. The differentiation doesn't always come in the current thing we're observing. It can come in the frame around it. Maybe how the teacher prepared a subset of kids for today's lesson a day or two ahead of time. Maybe how the teacher has the students respond to this day's lesson tomorrow or in their homework. For example of what that might look like real clearly, I might have some students that are English as a second language learner. That's their designation, and they have no prior knowledge, no personal background with something I'm about to teach. Maybe it's a Wednesday, I'm about to teach this. So on Monday and Tuesday, I prepare and give them prior knowledge, personal background building experiences, so when they get to Wednesday, they can fully appreciate and learn from that experience. Well, a typical observer walking in the room wouldn't necessarily see that because they were only there for that Wednesday lesson. They would need that behind-the-scenes frame to make it work.
To learn more about Rick's work, check out Differentiation, From Planning to Practice, Grades 6 to 12, available online at Stenhouse Publishers and through your Stenhouse distributor. Thanks for listening.